Hopefully soon, yeah.
Hopefully soon. I mean, we've been waiting a good month, like trying to find out. So,
Yeah, all of us.
right?
Yeah. So we're live now, Coach Mel. You can start. Uh, you're the host now. So we're live on YouTube and we're live. The attendees are in. Okay.
Okay, coach.
Hello, man.
Hi, Coach.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good
What's up, brother?
afternoon.
I'm good, Coach.
What's up, man? You all good?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Coach, this afternoon, I'm the one to, of course, introduce you before we start. Okay.
Okay.
So, of course, we all know that Coach Mark Dickel now is the team consultant of Talk and Text Katropa. And then,
Yes,
of
sir.
course, his coaching experience before was in Albanian senior national team in 2010, 2011. And of course in the New Zealand, okay, NBL 2011, 2012, and then in Canterbury Rams, New Zealand, okay, Professional League 2013, and then of course he is the former assistant coach of New Zealand national team in 2018. Okay, and of course Coach Mark Dickel is one of best point guard, no? In his college days. Of course, his achievements was he is in 2000 NCAA All-American Division, and of course, NCAA leader in assists. And in 2002 and 2004 in Turkish League MVP, and of course in 2006 FIBA Euro League All-Star. Okay, so this afternoon we are privileged and we are happy to have Coach Mark Dickel this afternoon. Coach, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, man. Thank you for the introduction.
Yes, okay, Coach.
Hello.
So, Coach Mel, you take it away.
Yes, coach. Coach Mark will talk about our grassroots program and also the coaching journey of Coach Mark Dickel. Pero papipiliin natin si coach. Coach, you will choose either what you will start, either the grassroots program or your coaching journey.
Right? It doesn't matter, man. You just let me know which way you want it to go.
Let's talk about first the coaching journey of Coach Mark Dickel.
Okay, well, I think it's probably easier if I go back to the start. Obviously, my father was a coach, so that kind of helped it. Basketball in New Zealand when I was growing up, it wasn't a very well played sport. Obviously, in New Zealand, it's rugby and cricket are the dominant sports, but basketball's kind of overtaken them now, and it's actually the most played sport, definitely amongst our youth. So it's been a huge change in my country in basketball. Grew up around the game, obviously loved it. And I wasn't terribly big as a kid. I was little, so I kind of followed my dad to all the tournaments and didn't really ever see myself growing big enough in order to be a good player. I mean, height isn't a prerequisite, but it definitely helps if you're taller. Especially the way the game was played back then, it was much slower, and they tended to just pass the ball into the bigger players and let them dominate. So, for me, I was always kind of thinking, coaching wise, that what makes a good coach and how do you become a good coach and what do you got to do. So I was lucky enough to have my father was a coach, and then when I was 12 years old, Tab Baldwin moved to my city in New Zealand, and so I got to work under him, meaning he trained me for 2 or 3 years, and when he left my city, he started coaching our junior national teams as under 18 and under 20 head coach. So I started playing for those teams at that time. So I kind of got spoiled a little bit. I had people that were really good when I was young that were able to kind of show me the basics of the game and what's important fundamental wise. And then I just got lucky from there. Like my college coach, Bill Bano, was really, really good. He was really good on the mentality of being a good player. I learned so much from him and how to talk to different players and relate to different players from different backgrounds and different nationalities, races, etc. And how he's able to get everybody to come in and come together. On my college team, I was a New Zealander. We had a Russian. We had another European player. We had white guys, black guys, and he did a great job of bringing us all together and making us one. After college, I played in Australia for 2 years under a great coach over there by the name of Brian Gorshin, ex-national team coach. He's actually coaching now in China. He's been Chinese national team coach also. He's a great coach. He's actually the reason that I got connected at UNLV in the first place. His father used to be an assistant coach there. So, you know, I've been familiar with him since I was 17 or 18 years old. Since I first played on the New Zealand national team, I came into contact with him and played there for 2 years, kind of learnt the game more, and then played in Europe from 2001 to 2011. So, you know, that was kind of my journey as far as a player goes. And all the time I was just trying to pick coaches' brains and understand the game better, because I always wanted to be a coach. So pretty much the moment that I stopped playing, I just started coaching. That's when I got the opportunity to coach the Albanian national team, and did that for 2 years and learned a whole lot. And then just really felt like I wasn't ready to be the coach that I wanted to be. So I went back to New Zealand and started coaching age group teams. I coached under 11, under 12, under 13 teams, and really tried to, in a situation where you're not putting yourself under so much stress or under the gun, learn how to do it. If you can relate to and coach young players, it's much easier as the players get older to be able to communicate and talk to them in a way that they want to listen to. You know, I would encourage anybody that wants to make a real job out of coaching to try and coach all levels. I coach boys and I coach girls. I kind of coach both. I didn't really worry about it. And, you know, my whole philosophy as a player was, you know, how do I improve? You know, so really player development. That's really what I focused on when I first started coaching, was how can I teach players how to individually get better? And the basketball stuff, you know, the X's and O's and how to coach and what to run and that, I mean, you can learn that. That's something that can be learned. But I think the patience and the trying to help players get individually better is a real big key. And that's really what I focus on now. You know, I'm really privileged here at Talking Tex. We've got a lot of really good assistant coaches that add a whole lot of basketball knowledge to it. I mean, my real focus is on the relationship with the players and trying to get them motivated and wanting them to play and motivating them to want to improve every day, which becomes difficult as they're older because, you know, they got families and wives and kids, and, you know, it maybe doesn't sound great to come 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning to work out and work on your game. But, you know, in basketball, if you're not trying to get better, you get worse. So, you know, as a coach, it's my job to stress to them that don't be surprised if the games don't go the way you want them to go if you're not prepared to do the work.
Okay.
Okay, so when I was 13, in 2012, when I moved back home, I was coaching age group teams. You know, our pro league over there is a little bit different. I was still playing for the pro league in my home city, Otago Nuggets at the time, but I was the head coach also, which is, I wouldn't advocate anybody doing that if you want to do either job correctly. But still a good learning process. I did that for 2 years and then moved from that city to Christchurch, and then was just head coach of their pro team for 5 years, and then came here. So that's kind of been my timeline as a development as a coach. I still feel like there's so much stuff I want to get better at, but the key, I feel, is the relationship with the players and how you can get their buy-in and get them doing what you think your team needs to do, because, you know, what your team needs to do is purely based around what personnel you have on your team. You shouldn't come in with a predetermined idea of what your system is. You should look at your players and try and make a system that fits them and enables them to play at their best.
Okay. Coach, was it hard for you transitioning from a player going to a coach?
It wasn't difficult. It wasn't difficult because at the end in Europe, my body had broke down. So, you know, I couldn't play 11 months of the year anymore. There was just no way. So coming back to New Zealand, and we only have a 6-month season, you know, I could focus more as a coach and play a little bit. Whereas in Europe, there was just no way I could do that. I didn't really want to play anymore. By the time I moved back to New Zealand, I really just wanted to focus on coaching. It was more a way to financially make more, to be totally blunt. You know, it was a way I could make more money. I could get paid as a player and a coach. So that's kind of why I did it. And the transition was easy because I really enjoy coaching younger people. So, that gave me a whole lot of motivation to try and get up and help them get better every day.
Yes, coach. How's about your adjustment? Do you already adjust in the basketball here in the Philippines?
I think it's still kind of a work in progress. Like it's hard. I mean, all the conferences are so different. You go from the All Filipino conference where, you got your core set of players that, a lot of their roles in that change when you come to the 16 conference or the 6-5 conference. It's kind of, I think you've got to go through a few of those before you really understand. I mean, I've only really had one conference of each, so I think now I have a better idea of what it takes in each conference and how they change so much. I was really looking forward to the All Filipino conference this year because just felt like we finally had a team that was pretty well balanced and we kind of understood how we wanted to play. But the cool thing about the PBA is that, man, you can lose to any team on any given night. There's so many good players and talented players on the other team, and it doesn't seem like any team is overawed playing any other team. They just come and play. So you got to make sure that you guys are ready to play, and if they are, you're going to have a good chance to win each game.
Coach, how about your leadership approach regarding, since you're coaching now a pro team, or you're helping the coach Ravenna or Bong Ravenna? How is it your leadership approach to your pro team now? Since that you're in a situation that you're waiting for the pandemic to calm down.
Well, look, it's really difficult because, like we're communicating with each other right now, but we don't really know what each other is going through. I think it's like coaching from a distance is really, really difficult because you can only ask how people are doing and then wish them well. I mean, that's pretty much all you can do. Whereas like the cool thing about basketball coaching is that you get to actually physically see and work with the people you're trying to help. So, it's been 3 months now. I would like to think all the players are staying in shape and doing their absolute best, and you try and stay on top of them and help them and communicate with them. But for the most part, they're on their own. And, as a basketball player, a lot of them haven't had a chance to shoot on a hoop or do any of that for 3 months now. So, you've got a whole lot of issues we're probably going to be going through if and when they allow us to get back and start playing. I mean, players are going to be terribly out of basketball condition and mentally kind of taking their foot off the accelerator a little bit and kind of shut down. I think mentally it's going to be a challenge for all of us once the season starts heading back towards training and then hopefully eventually playing games. It's going to be very difficult for the adjustment again because it's like the whole world's been put on pause, and the PBA is no different. I'm sorry, man. I can't hear anyone.
Okay, Coach. How
Yes.
about your confidence now? Is it will push through this year, or you think that it will not?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I hope it does. Like you see how other competitions around the world are opening up. There's no reason that in 2 or 3 months that if the safety precautions were taken that we couldn't do the same. It just depends. I guess it's just an organizational thing and how we do that. Obviously that comes down to whether the government allows this to happen. I'm sure the PBA and the majority of the teams want to do it, and then do the players ultimately want to do it? I mean, do they want to play and go through before there's a vaccine or medicine that can make it so that it's not such a big risk? But look, I think there's a lot of things to take into consideration because for the players or administrators, it's a little bit, sorry, for the coaches and administrators, it's a little bit different. I mean, we're not running around out there breathing on each other, right? So, I mean, the players are going to take much more risk than what we are. So, I think it has to be discussions with everybody and then, evaluating the risk and then hoping that we can do it safely.
Coach Mel, you have any questions? Coach Mel.
Yes, hello. Coach,
Yes, Coach.
what we will talk about, Coach, your plan about your the grassroots program,
Yes.
since the you also the part of the Gilas of the 24-man pool, and also our Gilas team.
Yes. What would you like to say? You want to talk about the whole program?
Yes, Coach. So other viewers can understand and learn from you, Coach.
Okay. Well, like obviously that's kind of Tab's baby, the Gilas program now. You know, along with Boss Al Panelio and Boss Ron Gregorio. I mean, they've kind of taken ownership of that thing. Um, the the thought process behind it is to try and have a whole lot of players in a pool that are capable of playing international basketball. You know, around the world, this is standard with the program we're going to talk about now. It's not something that's new anywhere, really. It's just something that's maybe a little bit newer here. You know, and being that the PBA has had such an influence over Gilas historically, you know, and making it so that with it being a 12-month-a-year program, it's very, very difficult for Gilas to make the preparation that they need to do in order to do well at international tournaments. So, you know, with 2023 not that far away now, I mean, it's quickly coming. You know, we're talking, hopefully, from the time we play, you know, it's not even 3 years before it's going to be on us. So, you know, the pool becomes very, very important. So the pool of players that they've put in there now from the last draft have been working out, obviously, individually, but they should have been in a world-class program where they would have been training all around the world. Like they would have already had a month in Europe. They would have already had a month in America. They would have had a month in between here each time they went somewhere training, practicing, playing games, just trying to get them up to a worldwide standard of other kids their age, right? With the thought process that each year, 6 or 7 or 8 players will come into that pool each time. And then by the time 2023 comes, you'll have a pool of players that you can pick from that of, say, 24 players. And you'll pick those ones there that you think are up to it and obviously add with the players that you see from the PBA that you think can help, right? So that's the kind of concept behind it, rather than just totally worrying and focusing on the PBA players who, to me, don't have an off season anyhow. I mean, this whole break period that we've had now is the first time in talking to the players that they've ever had any real length of time off. So, you know, whilst it's been a difficult thing for everyone in the world, I mean, maybe for the players it's been a good thing a little bit to have an extended break, because it's when you have an extended break your body can recover and you get motivated and want to come back and play again. So, you know, the concept is to give all of the players that are in the Gilas pool a basketball education that is outside of what just the Philippines has to offer. And the PBA is great, NBPL is great, and PBL, obviously, you know, the UAAP is great, the NCAA is great, but it's just a Philippine style of play. Like we've got to be able to adapt to all other countries' style of play. Otherwise, when we play against them, it's like a whole new game every time. So, you know, it's really nothing different than any other country would do to give yourself the best possible chance to win each game.
Hey, Coach. How about what can you say about your experience playing outside and of course coaching outside and here? What's the differences between the Philippine type of basketball and the other countries?
Well, I'll just give you differences from everywhere. It's probably the easiest way to say it. You know, like if you look at Europe, it's you know, the players are so savvy and so educated on so many different styles of play. It becomes really easy, and you kind of get spoiled a little bit in how much you have to teach them. Because they already know every coverage or what you're thinking or what's going on, just because their basketball education has been so solid and the coaching they've had has been of such a high level, and they've played so many games against such a high level of competition that it's really just adjustments you're trying to make during the game and combinations of players. So, it's kind of easier from that standpoint in Europe because they're so professional. And the style they play is a very unselfish, dribble the ball less, shooting dominated. If a guy can post up, you let him post up. If a guy's good isolation, you let him play isolation. Like you really play to their strengths. And it's kind of a game that you look at and you can tell the flow of the game. Like you can see what each team is trying to do. It's not hectic. They don't get up and down the court really quick. They play more half court. They're thinking more all the time. How do they take advantage of matchups? So, it's kind of more of a thinking man's game, right? Like, if you contrast that to New Zealand, it's kind of in between multiple styles. Like you'll have some teams that like to push the ball because they don't have any size. You'll have other teams that don't push the ball at all and play zone because they're huge, right? And we've got a lot of big players in New Zealand in contrast to the Philippines, for example. Like the previous team I coached, we had 3 7-foot players on it. So, and all of them could play. So the game is just different. The size of players is different. If you contrast it to the Philippines, where most teams just go. They're trying to get up as many shots as they can, as quick as they can, and they're more competent players tend to have more of an influence on the game. It tends to be more star driven over here. It tends to be more that guy's the best player, this guy's the best player, as opposed to, in Europe or New Zealand, we don't really have any of that. Like, say, if you're an importer, you come in and you play in Europe or you play in New Zealand or Australia, you're just another good player coming in. You're not going to come in and average 40 points, 15 rebounds. It's just not going to happen. Like, you're just going to come in and do your job. Whereas over here, the imports tend to come in and, for whatever reason, the players defer to them, and it's just expected, anticipated for them to dominate and take most of the responsibility of the game. So, look, it is what it is. I think that's a byproduct too. In New Zealand, we can have 3 or 4 imports. In Europe, you can have 3 or 4 imports on each team. So here you can only have at the very most 1. So the kind of expectation is that guy's coming in to do everything. So I think that's part of it also. And what I stress all the time at Talk and Text and try and get the guys to understand is I really don't want that to happen. I would far rather the focal point on the team is the local players, and we get great foreign players that come in and just play their game, right? So that's kind of my battle. That's something I've really got to work through because I felt like we got 2 really good imports in the last 2 conferences, but look, we weren't able to get it done. So, I've got to find a way to get more out of everyone.
Yes, coach. This is the question. How do you develop your system in a game?
In the game?
Yes, coach.
Well, I think the hard part about that is that, the other team has a lot to say with that. I think it's easier for us, I think it's easier for us defensively to stick to what we're trying to do than offensively. Because teams just do different stuff. I mean, we run a lot of on-ball stuff and we want to move the ball. So it really depends how the other team is defending our on-ball action that determines how the game is going to go for us. Is it going to be easy or is it going to be difficult, right? So it's more defensively that I feel like in the games we're locked in and ready to go, we can pretty much take the other teams out of what they're trying to do. In the games that we're not, we look really average and the other teams score easily. Now, some of that has to do with the other teams making good adjustments and being well coached and ready. But most of that, I feel like on the defensive end is, are we ready to play or not? And if we're ready to play, we can make it very difficult for the other teams to get good shots. And when they don't get good shots, we get easy fast breaks and open 3-point shots and transitions. So, it's more to me trying to just make small adjustments to what's going on and trying to give guys a go early if the other guys don't seem to be ready to play. and in the playoffs, the last two runs we've had, like injuries have kind of dictated how quick we can change when things aren't going well. Like in the playoffs, in all series, I think you need 9 or 10 guys in order to be able to make a real change to how the game is going, or if you don't like how your system is going, to try and change it. It's very difficult if 3 or 4 of those guys are out, and you hesitant to throw guys in that haven't played at all and expect them to come in and all of a sudden have the rhythm of the game. And when it's a game 4, game 5, game 6, game 7, whatever, it's very difficult to ask. So, I think for the most part, you've got to be a little bit lucky. You've got to be a little bit, you look at teams that win, they tend to find a way to stay healthy. So that's a big thing for us.
Coach, we have a question here coming from our, of course, attendees this afternoon. So her question is, what will it take for the Philippines to play at par with the other European teams, especially since we're shorter, or the shortest team, one of the shortest team, of course, and our tallest players will always be 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", like that.
Well, look, it's a really good question, because me and Tab debate that constantly, right? Like just to try and think, what are some of the ways that can be a strength? To me, the strength of the Filipino player is just how much they love to play, how tenacious they are, the fact that they can all shoot, dribble, and pass. They all know basketball. You don't have to educate them on defensive coverages or systems or how you want to play. I mean, they're educated and smart, and that's because basketball is such a big deal in your country. Like people know basketball here. If you talk to the average Filipino or the average New Zealander, the average Filipino knows far more about basketball. So there is advantages there, but how you play has to be the real advantage. Like what kind of style suits Filipinos? Like it has to be defensively, you take the other teams completely out of what they're trying to do. Because offensively, it's going to be very difficult, because the other national teams are elite defensively and really, really good, and they're going to do that to you. So if you cannot find a way to make the game difficult for them to score, you're in real trouble, because they're going to do that to you. You look at the majority of international games between two really good teams, the score is 63-65 at the end of the game. So how are you going to hold them in the 60s and give yourself a chance in order to win? So that's kind of where I think the Philippines has gone wrong. They've tried to focus, because in the PBA, we've got so many great scorers. We've got so many guys that can put the ball in the bucket, that the assumption is when they go play for Gilas, they're just going to get in the game and do the same thing. Well, they're playing against players from around the world that are more than ready to guard all the players from here. Are we ready to guard them? So that's really where Tab's focus and my focus currently is on. How do we make it so that there is a real system defensively that all the players understand, buy into, and get them to realize that if they're not going to play defense like that, then they're just not going to play. Like, that's got to be the focus. Because on offense, if we keep it simple, we know they're going to get good shots and can score. That's never going to be the issue on Gilas. The issue is, how can we defend those teams well enough in order to give ourselves a chance to win the game?
Coach, follow-up question regarding our plans for this 2023. How about are we replacing Andre Blatch for another naturalized player?
Yes, I'm sure that will happen. Now, I don't know who that is yet. That would be something you would ask Tab, Boss Al or Boss Ryan, what's going on exactly with that. But I know that they're all over that and trying to find someone that would really fit, and someone that would fit into the system that we're talking about. Someone that is not trying to come in and be a superstar. Someone that's just going to come in and really be an important piece on what we're trying to build.
Coach Mel, you have any question, Coach Mel? Coach, we have a question here coming from our attendees also. What is your influences in coaching? Who are your influences in coaching?
Well, obviously my father, Coach Tab, Bill Boehner, huge influence for me. Brian Gorshin, huge influence. Jamie Dixon at TCU, love how he coaches. Had a lot to do with him. A Turkish coach, Aydın Ers, I loved him. I played for him for 2 years. He was awesome. And it's been a lot. I mean, to be honest, whether I've had a really good coach like the ones that I've just mentioned, or a coach that I didn't think was as good, I really just tried to take little bits from them and write it down in my book, and then think, okay, when I get a chance to be the coach, I'm either going to do that or I'm not going to do that, right? So, good or bad, you just try and take stuff from everyone else, because we're all thieves in coaching, man. We're stealing from everyone else. So, whatever you can learn and whatever you can steal, you should do it and try and make it your own, because, basketball hasn't changed that much. 50 years ago, there was great coaches. But how did they do it? They motivated their players and could connect with them and get them to go out and play hard. I mean, that's the basis of it. Outside of that, all the other stuff you can learn.
Coach, how about since we are coaching in the province here, no? Of course, we are giving players going to Manila to give them a good college education. What are your advices or as provincial coaches? Because we're for example, like there are some of the Gilas players who are coming from Cebu, coming from Bacolod, coming from other parts of the country.
Well, the first thing is, I mean, you guys are doing a real service for Philippine basketball. I mean, that's the truth. You look at our team, I can't say my favorite player on our team, but my player I really, really like is Roger Pagoy, and he comes from Cebu, for example. So, I mean, a lot of great players come out from outside the provinces. So, just realize the service you're doing. I think the focus should be just on player development, and just don't be too worried about whether your teams win or lose, because it just doesn't matter. I know that's kind of the opposite of what a lot of the coaches are told, because in order to keep moving up and people saying you're a good coach, you've got to win. But if you kind of go back a step and you just think, if all of the players on your team improve, if all of them are always getting better, your teams are going to win. They're just going to win. You don't need to worry about that, right? So it's just at least half of your practice, every practice, should be on individual player development. And the whole focus and what they should understand about what you're trying to get them to do is to improve their game. That should be it. It shouldn't be on what offense we're running, what defense we're running, what the other team's doing, scouting. It should be purely at least half of your practice. How can I make it so that all my players are better dribblers, passers, shooters, more educated on the game, understand different styles of play, know what makes a good player, really encourage people to be good passers, good teammates, good screeners. Try and teach them that the game is not all about winning and losing, because it's just not, right? Like if you can go back a few steps and really stress to the players that this is about you getting better at basketball, trust me, you'll win and you'll benefit, because eventually everyone will see that your players look different to everyone else's players. And when people say that, trust me, they come asking you to coach and do things in different places.
Yes, coach. How do we maximize our talent pool for Gilas and our 24 pool?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. We've really got to hope that Kai Soto and AJ Edu and these guys continue to develop. We've got to hope that the players in the PBA continue to develop. And we've really got to hope that the Gilas pool players will develop. And I really think they will. And then everyone's just got to stick to the script and don't change and have the plan and stick to it, and don't get discouraged if we go away to the Asian champs and don't do well, or, it's all about 2023 playing really well in that tournament when it's here. So, the key is, how do we get out of the group? Well, we're going to have to beat a couple of really good teams to get out of the group. So really, all of this work and all this preparation is for 2 games in the World Champs. That's what it's all for. Because if we can win those 2 games, you're out of your group, and then after that, it's just single elimination and win and move on. So, the success or failure of the program is going to be dictated on those 2 games.
Coach, how can we utilize Sky Soto? Is he in the pool for 2023, or is he playing for us to represent the country?
Look, I'm sure he would. I mean, he's very patriotic and loves the Philippines, and desperately wants to be the first Filipino to play in the NBA. And he's doing that, obviously for himself and his family, but he's doing that for Gilas and the national team and the country, and we're all behind him in that. I don't think that'll be an issue for 2023, him wanting to be involved. And he should be able to, for the most part, mix and match and come in whenever he can, and I'm sure the program wants him to do that. The thing for Kai is, man, he's got to have the time, and he's still so young. He's got to have the time to be able to grow into his body and improve and really go on the court and work on his game against better players, and then hopefully at the end of that, we've got a player in 2023 that can start for Gilas and be a key contributor. Just because he's talented and young and huge doesn't mean that one thing's going to lead to the other. Around the world, there's plenty of Kai Sotos. You go to Spain, there's probably 10 of them, right? So, what do we? We can't put too much pressure on the guy. I mean, I really think he's going to have a great chance to make it, and he's really talented. And I would like to think that he's a Gilas mainstay for a long time.
Coach, do you think that escaping college and going straight to the NBA G League is a good idea for him right now, or it's better to undergo college in the US?
Look! I think he's making all the right moves. He's doing the right thing. He's going to get great coaching there. He's going to get, he's around other people that are all trying to do what he's trying to do and making the NBA. He stated that that's his goal, and good for him. He believes in himself, man. If you believe in yourself and you work hard, why can't he do it? I think he's getting good advice and making good decisions. Let's just all support him and hope that it all works out.
Hello, Coach.
Hello.
You handled 2 national teams. Can you compare the 2 national teams that you handled, Coach? The team Albania and the team Philippines. Can you please compare can you tell the differences between the 2 national teams that you handled, Coach?
Well, two teams totally different. First off, Albanian team was kind of old. We had a lot of veteran players. Most of them all played in Italy and Turkey and Greece. So we only had a couple of players from the actual Albania that were playing in the Albanian league. So we had a lot of veteran players and a lot of professional players and really good players. So, it was kind of easy from that standpoint. Look at Gilas. We had a few veteran players from the PBA, but they were even more younger players, and definitely younger players from the concept that they were the younger players that were just on the previous Gilas team before I was involved in it. And then we had a whole lot of the guys from the Gilas pool. So 2 totally different worlds, really. In one scenario, I just had to come in and manage some personalities. That was kind of it, and make sure that I didn't tire them out too much in practice talking about Albania. Whereas here, it was like, man, you pretty much can't do that. They're all young and they want to go and they want to learn. So it was exciting from that standpoint. I kind of prefer the younger, more motivated and wanting to go and train and work on your game. But man, I just played with the hand I was dealt in Albania and tried to do the best I could do in order to give ourselves a chance to win. So, I think a big part of that as a coach, man, you just got to be prepared to adapt, and whatever hand you get dealt, just make the best of it.
Thank you, Coach. Another, Coach, is that I read your article about the point guards. For the benefit of the viewers, can you please tell the 5 different types of point guards, Coach? I read in your FB wall about the articles about the point guards. Because I'm big fan of yours.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I just didn't understand. It just cut out. You asked what?
about
What was
the
the question?
five uh,
About the 5 qualities of point guard.
five qualities of a point guard, coach. That
Oh,
you
look, man, I could. Where did you? What article did I write? I could give you 15 qualities. What were the five? Refresh me, and I'll go over it. Where did you read this? How long ago did I write this? When did I say this?
It's more of a, if you will make it in a paper, it will be 2 pages per.
Oh, look. I'll talk about point guards for a while because it's something that I think is very, very important because there's kind of been a change of the game where like point guards have kind of gone from a distributing defensive mentality to kind of the main weapon on offense almost. And to me, I think it's a great change. I don't think there's any one way you should play the point guard position. It's just interesting how it changed because, when I was growing up, it was more Magic Johnson, Jason Kidd, John Stockton. You kind of wanted to play more like that. You just scored when you had to, and you tried to make sure that the game became easier for everyone else. Whereas, you kind of fast forward to the 2000s, now Allen Iverson comes in, right? And that's when the whole thing changed because, man, he could come in every game and score 50 and 60, and he was the main focal point on the team, and everyone kind of looked for him. So, there has been a real change in the game. You look at, there's kind of hybrids now. There's like Chris Paul that kind of does both. You kind of got Kyrie Irving, who was a scorer. If you look at the top level, and then if you go to Europe, it's like how it was in the 80s and 90s in the NBA. Like all the dominant point guards over there are distributors, passers, and defenders. So, it's just a change. I think the game always evolves. I don't think there's any change in these things though. Like your point guard has to be a leader, right? He has to be a leader, and he has to be able to relate to everybody on the team. If he can't do that, then he's not the point guard, right? The second thing is he has to be completely connected to the coach. So the coach and the point guard have to be totally on the same page and thinking and seeing the same thing out there and thinking how they can try and work together to get a good flow in the game and to try and help the other players out there on the court play well. Now, that doesn't matter if you've got a scoring point guard. So for us, we've got, Jason Castro, for example, who's a great scorer. I actually have to encourage him to try and be more aggressive to score because that's what he does great. He's so unselfish and such a good guy that it's sometimes hard to get him to want to do that all the time. He'd just rather defer and pass them the ball, whereas, he can score, man. He could get 30 or 40 and a half if he wanted to sometimes, I feel like. So, it's the connection the head coach has with the point guard. And then a huge part of it is confidence in the point guard position. Like that guy can never get rattled. He should never look like he's upset at referees or other players on the court, or he's out there trying to fight or hit people, because then everybody on your team sees that. And then suddenly the flow of your team is knocked out of rhythm, right? So these are all characteristics to me that make a point guard really, really important. And then toughness, mental toughness, physical toughness, not backing down. So many characteristics of a point guard. And then at the end of the game, he cannot be scared to make whatever play he's got to make in order to win the game. If that means he shoots, passes, rebounds, steals, gets whatever he has to do, he's got to be fearless out there and not be afraid to lose the game.
okay, coach? About your interim status, are we expecting that you'll be long term with this time, or we're still looking for another coach to, of course, to accept the offer?
Look, I really don't know because like initially when it happened, I was just happy to do it. Like I wasn't really thinking anything more, and I'm employed by Talking Tech, so for me it's not like it's something that I'm out here campaigning for, right? Like I've got a great job and I'm very happy doing this now. My mentor is someone I'm very, very close to, being Tab, is the one who's running the program. So obviously, whether I'm head coach or not, I'm still going to be involved and try and help him as much as absolutely possible. And the fact that, MVP is the one who's backing Gilas and Boss Al and Boss Ricky and Boss Ryan are all heavily involved, and I really like and respect all those guys. So of course I want to help. That's really out of my hands. If they ask me to do it, of course I'll do it. It's a huge honor. I love coaching international basketball. I love the games and seeing different players, and I really liked working with the other players that were in the PBA, because you get to see how they play and how they practice and learn more about them. It's all pretty cool, all good stuff.
Coach, we have a question here. What does the future of Gilas look like with the current and upcoming roster of the PBA players? Are there any particular players you'd be looking forward to have in the Gilas team later on?
Well, look, I think the future is very bright, because there's a program in place that's going to allow all the players to get better, and there's an actual plan, right? Now, the cool thing about plans is once you have a plan, you've just got to follow it, right? So I'm sure the people involved, they're going to follow it. The problem is, and what people need to understand is, so are all the other international teams around the world. They're all doing the same thing and thinking how they can be great for the next world champs, right? So, it's going to be difficult, but there's no reason that Gilas cannot have a great international team. There's no reason. They should be more than competitive, and we will be, I think, in 2023.
Yes, coach. And what will be your focus in our Gilas team?
Excuse me? What will be my
Okay, coach.
focus?
What will be your main focus
Well,
in our
look,
Gilas team?
yeah, like my main focus is just trying to talk to all the players and trying to let them understand what kind of mentality you need in order to go into world championships and international games and play well. Because everybody that plays at that level is talented, and they've all proven that they deserve to play at that level. So it's a mentality and a mindset you need in order to go in there and do well. That was something that I learned over time. That's not something that players are born with. That's something that coaches need to help you through, and that's something that as a player I was always ready to go. So I felt like that was my advantage. So that's really what I try and work with players on. It's just a mentality and what you go into each game and think like. Because the preparation before your game dictates how well you play in each game. You just can't get in the game and turn it on. There's only been one player that can do that, and that guy's Michael Jordan, right? So everyone else has to be able to come into the game ready to go. So that's really my focus. That's what I try and talk to them about, and let them know that, on international teams, you play 20, 22 minutes. That's all you play. So every minute you're out there, you better take advantage of the time you get. So that's kind of it.
Okay. Coach, how do you handle players like your imports in Token Tech before or last year? How do you handle? Yeah, how do you handle your imports? Like that. How do you handle him with your team?
Well, look. If you have players, I mean, they're just players. They're the same as everyone else. You just, you have a relationship with them. You become friends with them to the point that, they know that you have confidence in them and you believe in them and they're here to do their job, and then try and make it so that all the other players understand that they're a part of the group and that you're not treating them any differently to anybody else, and that you're going to hold them accountable and try and demand that they practice and do the same things that everybody else does, and then just hold them accountable to that. There's absolutely no issues on any of the teams I've ever been on with import players or anything that I was an import myself for 12 years, so I'm well aware of how difficult it was sometimes to feel like you're going to fit in. So I try and go out of my way to let them know that the players that are here on the team are going to have their back and allow them to play well and support them.
Okay. Coach, we have a question here coming from our attendees this afternoon. They're asking if do you think we can beat these top Asia teams or Oceania teams in our of course when we reach the 2023 or the qualifiers?
Look, I think so. I mean, it's not going to be easy. You got Australia, New Zealand, China, Iran, Japan now, really good. Korea, really good. I mean, there's a lot of really good teams. So, but yeah, because it's not a series we have to play. We just have to play one game and beat them, right? So, like, there's no reason that we cannot. And with the program that's in place, I think if everybody follows through and continues to do the work that they're doing and the players keep developing, there's no reason that they can't happen.
Okay. Coach, there's another question here, follow up to that. How do European basketball helps us regarding with international competition?
Well, it's just how they play, right? Like like they capitalize on mistakes. You cannot turn the ball over. When you do, you're in trouble. They make it a possession game. They pick on players out there on the court that maybe can't defend up to the level of what they should be able to at that level. Any mistake you make coaching-wise is capitalized on. Any mistake on the court is capitalized on. Your margin for error is really small. You've got to realize that the start of the game is just as important as the middle and the end, because any mistake that's made, they will capitalize on. And that's what they've learned, because you cannot be an elite European team if you don't follow those rules, right? So, before you talk about style of play, before you talk about any of that, it's, man, you cannot beat yourself. You absolutely cannot beat yourself. You've got to be ready to go, and you cannot make mistakes. So you cannot turn the ball over. You cannot take bad shots, because they'll capitalize on all of that.
Yeah. Coach Mel will have a question for you, Coach. Coach Mel, what's your question this afternoon for Coach Mark? Okay. Coach, Coach Mel will ask you a question.
Yes,
Sure.
Coach. Do you surely you watch some games for in the UAP and the NCAA? We see players, talented players. How can we what to call this? How can we gather them and to be it's like because UAP and NCAA is part of grassroots, right? What will
Look,
be your
Jack,
what talents you like to put it in a Gilas pool?
well, obviously size and length is a premium.
Mhm.
I like the guy off Tana. I think he's super talented. But there's a lot of guys, man. I tried to watch as much as I could of the UAAP and the NCAA, just because we draft players directly out of that. So, I feel like I've got a better idea. And some of our assistant coaches obviously work with Ateneo, and Josh has worked with FEU in the past. So he has a connection to all those programs. And I saw all the Ateneo guys practice every day. A lot of them practice with me early in the morning also. So, yeah, man, like really good competition, both the NCAA and the UAAP. I think UAAP is probably a little bit better. I thought it was a little bit of a backward step from the NCAA to not allow imports to play in that now, because it kind of teaches players to play against size. Internationally, there's always 7-footers on the court that can protect the rim. So if you're not playing against that all the time, there's kind of a detriment in order for how our national team learns how to adjust against that. Like there's so many positives that you see in the grassroots level. Like there's one point that I always try and make, because it's something that I had a little bit to do with in New Zealand, was that you shouldn't be able to play zone over here in any age group games until they're under 17. They should have to play man-to-man. Just my kids are all 11, 13, and 15 years old. They're all going to school here at Reedley. So I go and watch a lot of their games or practice games or whatever. And every single team sits in a 2-3 zone. And there's no work. How do you develop based off that? If you can't shoot, then you don't have a chance to go out there and show yourself at all. So, in New Zealand, what we did is we just said, until they're 16 years of age, you're not allowed to play zone. You have to play man-to-man, because then it gives every player a chance to work and develop their skills. It's not zones are good if you're 7 foot tall. They're not that good if you're 5'7", right, and can't shoot that well. I mean, how are you going to play? Whereas if you teach people how to play man to man, I think that really helps them for their development as they go forward.
Okay. Coach, another question here. One of the viewers asking your most memorable wins in the PBA and, of course, your defeat. How do you bounce back?
Well, the most important wins in the PBA, and what was the second part?
Yeah, the defeat. How do you bounce back from defeat?
A most important win is every win, right? like, like that's pretty standard. But how do you, the good point about how do you bounce back from defeat? Because that's very difficult. Because when you're winning, like everything's good in the world, and when you're losing, it feels like the world's going to end, right? Like we're all like that as coaches because it's such a fine line. But I tell you what I did as a player, and I've always tried to do as a coach, right? If you've put everything you can possibly put into the game, if you're prepared as well as you can, and if you've done everything you can in order to do well, if you've done what the coach asked as a player, or the players have tried to do what you asked as a coach, and you're just not good enough, or if the other team hits a shot at the buzzer to beat you, you didn't really lose that game, right? It just means you've got to do more work, right? So how do you process the losing when, man, it's just a process. The only loss that matters is the last loss. That means that you didn't win the championship, right? That loss matters. All of them until then, that's just a teachable moment that you're trying to get them through to a point that you can get your team good enough to win a championship, right? So, the hard part about the PBA is that, in comparison to a lot of other leagues, man, you got to win best of 5, best of 7, best of 7 in order to win the whole thing, right? So, you don't just have to be good enough one time, you've got to be good enough 3 or 4 times. And that's the challenge, right? You've got to get a team that's good enough to consistently beat the other team, and that's not easy to do.
Coach, again, Coach, thank you very much for your insights for this afternoon. We've learned a lot from you. And I think Coach Mel will have a last question, and then Coach Dindo will have his questions or parting words after.
Sure, thank you.
Coach Mel, is it ready? Coach Dindo, ikaw na. Coach?
Before programs and coach, my sincere apology for the late broadcasting of this program. I am very sorry.
No problem, bro.
Thank you, Coach.
No problem, man. My pleasure.
Thank you, Coach Mark. In basketball, we have learned this afternoon. It is a small word after all. So, guys, thank you. Coach Mark, thank you.
No problem, man. My pleasure. You guys stay safe.
Thank you.
Yeah, Coach
Thank you,
Mark,
Coach.
thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach Mark.
Good to see you, brother. Hope to see you soon.
Yeah, see you soon. Thank
Coach
you.
Mark.
Thank
Take
you.
care, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.